All right, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of BAM GPG. Go Pack Go. You can, if you haven't already, go ahead and like and subscribe to our channel here. You can also follow us on TikTok at bam.brands. Again, that's bam.brands on TikTok. I'll be your host, Ben.
And I'll be your co-host, Bryson.
All right, Bryson. So let's go ahead and kick this one off again today. You know, and it's going to be similar to yesterday's episode. I really want to dig into this Myles Garrett news that broke yesterday, right? So Myles Garrett came out yesterday requesting a trade from the Browns. You know, I think anybody can take a look at Cleveland, and their franchise is in trouble right now. You know, they went heavily invested in on the quarterback, Watson. His level of play hasn't panned out. He hasn't been able to stay on the field. And, you know, they've really given out some hefty contracts there. So it's going to be tough for Cleveland to even bring anyone in. So it's looking like the Browns are going to have to tear down and rebuild. So I think Myles Garrett can see that. You know, and he's not towards the end of it. He's not at the end of his career yet, but, you know, he's in the latter half of his career. So he's really looking to win a Super Bowl at this point. He wants to be on a competitor, you know, and for the next 2, 3, possibly 4 years down the road, that's not going to be with Cleveland, right? Mm-hmm. You know, despite what Cleveland's general manager came out and said last week about wanting Myles Garrett to finish as a Cleveland Brown, at this point, it just doesn't look like it's going to happen. You know, Myles Garrett wants to go to a competitor, and, you know, a team that would fit that mold, the Green Bay Packers, right? So,
well, like every team could fit.
Yeah, every team, but if you're looking at true contenders, right, there's only a handful of teams, AFC, NFC, who realistically have a chance to compete for a Super Bowl.
Probably everybody in the Packers division, including the Packers.
Yeah, I mean, if you take a look at this year, Minnesota, you know, where'd that come from? You know, they were expected to win 6, 7 games, and, you know, they blew that out of the water. They certainly look like a pretty solid team. You know, they have a big question mark going into next season at quarterback. You know, who's going to be the guy under center? I know they drafted JJ there, but he was out all year with an injury, so he's probably, you know, I wouldn't foresee him coming in right away next year and starting at quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings, right? You know, at least that wouldn't be the smart way of doing it. You know, being, I guess, looking at it as a Packer fan, how we're used to draft and develop, that's kind of how you like to see quarterbacks kind of eased into the league a little bit, right? So I think they'll probably look to retain what they have, or possibly look for a veteran quarterback on the market. Mm-hmm. So, but let's go ahead and dig into this. So, super, you know, fantasy land right now, you know, Green Bay is going to be competitive for Myles Garrett, and what's it going to take, you know, and let's compare them to what's out there, right? So, you know, there is a free agent defensive end in particular that, you know, I certainly would be interested in, who you wouldn't have to give up a lot of, you wouldn't have to give up any draft capital for him, but, you know, a little bit higher salary, probably not as high as Myles Garrett. You know, Myles Garrett's got 2 years left on his deal. When that is up, it's, you know, probably going to reset the market for defensive ends. You know, he's probably going to be looking at a Bosa type of money. So, and certainly deservingly so. So, let's go ahead and take a look at this. So we did look at Myles Garrett yesterday. So we'll look at him again. Kind of look at his PFS stats on the year. But let's go ahead and just take a look at Khalil Mack again here. Bryson, just kind of see where he fell again. All right, so here's Khalil Mack's PFF stats for the year. If you want to go ahead and cover that, Bryson.
Yeah. Overall grade 90.4, fifth in the league. Pass rush grade 79.9, 16th in the league. 1 defensive grade, 88, second in the league. Solo tackles, 2024, 24th in the league. Sacks, 7, 33rd in the league. Assists, 3, 115th in the league. And forced fumbles, 2, 8th in the league.
Yeah, so certainly better than our leading defensive end, Rashawn Gary. If we looked at his stats last night, and they're competitive, right? They're kind of middle of the road. Not necessarily your 1A type of player. Khalil Mack, he is 33 years old, so he does have a little bit higher age on him than what a Myles Garrett is. Myles Garrett's 29, going to turn 30, but 33 years old. Still a big body, 6'3", 269, and he's still playing with the same intensity that he always has in his career. So, again, he's a guy that you're potentially could pick up without giving up any draft capital, and then probably for a little bit cheaper salary. But is Khalil Mack to the same level as Myles Garrett right now? No. He's not. He's probably 1B. Myles Garrett's your 1A type of player. But still, to grade out a 90.4, his pass rush, looking at what PFF has him graded as, 79.9, not terrible, pretty decent. But his run defense, 88, that's second of all defensive ends in the league. So sacks were down a little bit, only had 7 sacks. But, he's certainly a guy that would fit well across from Rashawn Gary. Kind of take, as we mentioned yesterday, taking some of that pressure away from Gary. So where does he compare to a Myles Garrett, right? So we said he's probably a 1B, Myles Garrett's a 1A. So we can go ahead here. Let's drop his down here for everyone, Bryson. And then we'll go ahead and pull up Myles Garrett here for you. Right there.
Overall grade, 92.3, second in the league. Pass rush grade, 92.8, second in the league. 1 defensive grade, 78.4, 11th in the league. Solo tackles, 23, 43rd in the league. Sacks, 14, 3rd in the league. Assists, 6, 68th in the league. Forced fumbles, 3, 3rd in the league.
Yeah, again, just insane stats. It's almost the opposite of Khalil Mack. Khalil Mack had a little bit better run defensive, graded out a little higher on run defense than he did pass rush, but the pass rush is what Green Bay missed this year, right? Had pretty solid run defense, had unexpectedly great linebacker play, which certainly contributed to that. But 92.8 pass rusher, that's what Green Bay needs. That's what we've missed this year. So, certainly looking at where our defense fell short this past season, Myles Garrett certainly would fill that void that we're missing. And again, he's 3.5 years younger than Khalil Mack. So you're getting more positive years, especially if you're able to retain him beyond his 2 years that he has left on his contract. But again, you're looking at more draft capital. You're looking at higher salary that you're going to be paying out, which means probably less retention for the guys that you currently have on your roster who are going to be coming up. And then down the road, if you're paying a higher salary to a guy like Myles Garrett, probably top of the league for defensive ends, you're probably not going to be as active in free agency, 2-3 years down the road. So that's something to keep in mind when you do look at a trade like this. So, Bryson, what do you think? So if Green Bay's serious players for Myles Garrett, which I think they should be, go all in, get the guy, make it the Reggie White of this generation, get on the phone like Holmgren. Hey, Myles Garrett, this is God. Come to Green Bay, right? So what do you think it takes to get a guy like that?
Jair and maybe a third, or a first and a second or a third.
I certainly think it's gonna take a first round pick, but it's also going to take more than that, right? And it's tough, right? So Green Bay's got the 23rd pick in this year's draft, and as everyone knows, the draft's in Green Bay this year, which makes it extra special. Is Green Bay going to want to give up the first round pick when we're hosting it in our city, right? Going to be a lot of Packer backers there. Going to be excited, so they're going to want a reason to come there day one. So the way I look at it, can we get him by not giving up a first round pick this year? Maybe part of the trade package is a first round pick for the 2026 draft, right? Is that? But again, there's going to be a lot of competition in this, and we don't know where we're going to land come next year in the draft, especially if we do get Myles Garrett. Likelihood is we're probably going to be drafting lower in 23 next year, but that would be a question mark for the Browns if they did agree to something like a 2026 first round pick. So obviously a first round pick, maybe a trade could look like something where a first round pick 2026, maybe a third round pick this year, and then we give up a guy, like you said, like a Jair Alexander, right? Or we have some young wide receivers. We're pretty deep at wide receivers. Maybe we look at trading. Christian Watson's hurt, so I don't see. If he was healthy, I could see Green Bay probably trying to package him in some form of trade. But with him being hurt, he's probably not movable at this point. But maybe you try to package something with like a Romeo Dobb or a Jaden Reed. They're solid receivers, but those are receivers you could probably fill the void with on day 2 or day 3 draft picks.
Mm-hmm.
So what would your ideal package look like for Myles Garrett, Bryson?
Probably first and a third.
First and a third. So what would you do to sweeten the pot if you were to add players to the mix?
Jair in a third or second.
So you're looking at maybe like a first round pick in 2026, second round pick this year, and then Jair Alexander. That's and certainly that would be a very competitive trade offer to him. Certainly something I think Cleveland would have to take serious, right? And this is tough. Cleveland's going to have to move on from him at some point. I think they're trying to save face a little bit just because of all the money they spent here the last couple of years. They really have nothing to show for it, right? They're going to have to tear down and start a complete rebuild, and if they hold on to Myles Garrett for another year, another 2 years, they're not going to get the same haul as far as draft capital as what they are right now. So, if clear heads prevail, I think Cleveland will, kind of decide that, yeah, we do have to move on from Myles Garrett. Myles Garrett's ready for us to move on from him. And, they'll try to get the most capital back in the draft that they can for him. And Green Bay, there's going to be teams that want him that are going to be picking higher than us in the first round. So it's what more are you willing to give up for him, right? So it's obviously going to take a first. Maybe if we can give up a first in 2026, second or third this year, plus the player. That's something that we have that we could kind of sweeten the pot with is, we have a plethora of young talent that we could add to that, whether it be a wide receiver or even at running back. We haven't seen much of him, but, you got Wilson, and then you also have the rookie that we haven't seen much of this year. Marshawn Lloyd, potentially he could be part of the package, right?
Mm-hmm. But I really want to see Marshawn Lloyd play.
Yeah, I know. Me personally, too, I want to keep Marshawn Lloyd. I think he's going to be special, right? It's unfortunately he didn't get to see the field this year, but, I think he really is going to be a special player for us.
Yeah.
So, absolutely. So, yeah, that's kind of – so kind of where my head is too, as far as a package goes for Myles Garrett. I would probably look at 2026 first round pick. I'd like to stay away from giving up a second, but if that's what it took to sweeten the pot, a second round pick in this year's draft, and then looking at giving up some young talent. Possibly Jair. Jair would be the first option.
Yeah.
But if they're looking more offensively, again, pick a name at wide receiver. We have plenty of young talent, receiver and running back. We have plenty of depth, and it's a position that you can certainly fill second, third, fourth round of the draft. Gutekunst kind of works his magic in those rounds to find those players where he hasn't worked his magic in the first round, as we've seen the last few years, but certainly worked his magic kind of in those earlier rounds, second, third, fourth round, where we found some magic, and we could certainly replace some of those players if we were to add them to a trade package with it. Mm-hmm. So we took a look at these two players here, Bryson, Myles Garrett, Khalil Mack. Where's your head at between the two?
Myles Garrett, he's younger.
Younger. Yeah. So this is where, I kind of go back and forth on, because if we did look at taking a Khalil Mack, as we mentioned, be a little bit less salary. So, you could potentially go out and still be players in the free agent. You could address wide receiver. You could address cornerback, even offensive line help. You could pick up a guard, right? Josh Myers, probably not going to be back. Didn't have a great year. He's a fan favorite. I don't want to say fan favorite for everyone, but certainly he's got his following with Green Bay, people like Josh Myers, but his level of play just hasn't been there, right? So definitely going to need some offensive line help. And if you did decide to go pick up a guy like Khalil Mack, kind of on a prove it deal, maybe 2 year deal, where you get him relatively cheap compared to a guy like Myles Garrett. You could potentially add a lot of other pieces to the Packers. But, when you look at the Packers, there's a lot of solid players, right? A lot of good players. I guess would be the best way to put it, right? We have a lot of good players. Not a lot of great players. That's kind of what we're missing is the great players, right? I think Jordan Love's probably one of those greats. Josh Jacobs, one of those greats. Tucker Kraft, yeah, absolutely. He probably fits that mold. Defensive side, Xavier McKinney. Edrin Cooper, certainly as long as he, doesn't have any setbacks in year two, probably fits that mold. But outside of that, we have a lot of complementary players, but we don't have those greats, right? And I think that's what Green Bay needs to go out and get, right? We have plenty of complementary players, good players. Don't have we're deep, right? But we're not deep at great players. We're not deep at potential future Hall of Fame type of players, which a Myles Garrett certainly would be. So that's kind of where I'm at. Just do it. Just go out and do it. Make the splash. We'll figure it out down the road. But, I certainly think that would make us strong contenders to win the division and possibly host some playoff games at Lambeau Field if we could go out and get a guy like that, especially with the way Jeff Hafley has his defense playing.
Yeah.
Right? So I agree. There's upside to both. Khalil Mack probably gives you more flexibility to go out and get more complementary players, which we're full of. But Myles Garrett gives you that guy. He gives you that guy that's probably a first ballot Hall of Famer, right? So you're going to get that level of play on the field. So kind of where my head is with it. Certainly is going to be interesting. But we'll stay tuned with it and kind of see where, there's going to be a lot of other teams, as we mentioned, in play for this guy, as there should be. The guy's fantastic. So, kind of flip the page here, Bryson, from that. Super Bowl weekend. Chiefs.
Eagles, Chiefs.
Chiefs, Eagles. So, you getting excited for the game?
No.
No. No, as we've mentioned before, not the two teams that we wanted in. That's for sure. You know, and I'm trying to get a feel for the game, right? I'm trying to find a rooting interest for one of the teams in there.
I just can't.
It's tough. It's tough. You know, I wish.
Yeah, I'm sure half of the country just wants the media to land during the Super Bowl.
Yeah, just tune in for the commercials, and that's all. No, I'm kidding, but it's tough. It's a tough one. The Chiefs are hard to like, right? And not for any particular reason. You know, I don't have any vendetta against any of the players. It's just it's tough to root for a team. You know, much like it was for the Patriots, right? You know, I couldn't stand seeing the Patriots dynasty win year after year after year. You know, you kind of get fatigue from that type of team. The Chiefs are certainly looking like that type of team. You know, they just find a way to win year after year after year.
Somehow.
Yeah. So I know it's hard to find a rooting interest. If I had to do anything, you know, I like Saquon, Iowa boy, Cooper DeJean, you know, that would probably kind of pull me towards Philly a little bit, but boy, is it tough to root for Philly, especially after the experience we had there in Philadelphia. But
Yeah.
outside of that, you know, if I'm looking at the players and not the fan base around them, you know, I do like Saquon. I do like Cooper DeJean just because of the Iowa ties, so that's probably where I would lean. And, you know, like, as you mentioned, most of the country, I have Chief fatigue, right? You know, they've won an awful lot here. Mm-hmm. So, what matchup are you kind of looking forward to seeing in the Super Bowl? Like, it doesn't have to be a specific, like, receiver on defender or, you know, or quarterback versus quarterback. It doesn't have to be anything specific like that. Maybe it could be like a particular offense versus defense. So what matchup are you most excited or I guess not excited, but maybe interested in seeing is probably the better way of putting it.
Probably Eagles O-line versus Chiefs D-line.
Yes, absolutely. It's almost like you're reading my mind. That's kind of where I'm at, right? So you got one of the top offensive lines in the league, right, in Philadelphia. It's crazy how good they are. They're big. They're good. They're talented. And then you got a Chiefs defensive line who just eats, right? I mean, that Chiefs defensive line, to me, that's what won the game in Buffalo, is that defensive line. They won the battle of the trenches. Can they do that against Philadelphia? It's going to be interesting, right? You know, you certainly got to think Philadelphia is going to go into this game thinking run, 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 and more run, right? Kind of control the game from the ground. And they have the talent. They have the ability to do that. Can the Chiefs stop it?
Just really good.
He's insane. I can't remember the last. It's probably Adrian Peterson. It's probably the last time I've seen this level of running back play. And, you know, we know Adrian Peterson well from his days in Minnesota. So, and it's just tough. And I watched some film and some highlights on Saquon, right? And knowing he's a big guy, he can be a power running back, but boy, when he gets out in the open, you're not catching him. He's got some surprising speed to him. You know, I looking back on some of his film and just seeing him, you know, once he gets out there, nobody's catching him, which surprises me for a running back that's, you know, built like him. So he's certainly one of a kind. You know, to me, should be the MVP of the league this year. Probably won't get it, but certainly should. But yeah, absolutely. That's the matchup I'm looking forward to seeing the most this year, or not this year, but this coming Sunday is that Chiefs defensive line versus that Philadelphia offensive line. Certainly going to be a great. I mean, it's going to be a battle in the trenches, and that's what I'm excited to see. If Philadelphia is able to control the game on the ground, Saquon does Saquon things. I think it's Philadelphia has a stout defense, right? It's going to be tough for Kansas City to keep up with them.
And as always,
Go Pack Go.